Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Saba show. We are back for the round 21 recap. And this week was the week of many upsets. I think if I was doing tipping, like formally, I would have ended up with 1 of 8 to this point. Because there were that many, surprises this week. And it started all the way back at Friday night. So let's get to that game. The Cats played the Giants at home, and well, they lost, and they lost pretty convincingly. They made a run late, but game was pretty much done. This Giants team, probably brought in 8 different players from the week before. Taranto went back into the midfield. You were just getting a lot of fringe players coming in, and they all had an impact. Taranto, he had been playing forward pocket minutes for no apparent reason. I mean, they've got a lot of midfielders, the Giants, but Taranto should not be playing forward pocket. But yeah, went back into the middle, kicked 2 goals, and had 31 touches, I believe, which is just, it's a pretty damn good showing. Especially against one of the top sides. They brought it. They brought it to the Cats. The Cats, they couldn't settle for their normal game. A lot of those sideways kicks that they usually do, tail with the switch, they couldn't really get that going all night. Sam Taylor, big job on Tom Hawkins. Held him very well. I think he had 12 intercept marks or 12 marks or something like that, which is just crazy. Huge step up. Especially with Phil Davis out this week. Even losing Josh Kelly before the bounce. Everything that went wrong for the Giants, it didn't matter. But yeah, look, this is a huge win in terms of the finals race. A lot of the teams that were in that hunt, 9th to 13th, they all won against the odds. So, big win for the Giants, but let me just touch on something. A huge talking point was the Joel Selwood, Toby Green incidents. Toby Green's, I'm not saying this because I hate the Cats, because I do hate the Cats, but that Toby Green bump or whatever that was, that's just, that is a footballing incident. I'm pretty sure he just moved his arm to try get over the tackle. It's as simple as that. And the Joel Selwood bump was just as blatant as it could possibly be. And he got let off, which is pretty, it's pretty shithouse, to be honest. That's what the MRO has come to. They let people, be able to bump, and they can get let off because the player continues the game. But the intent's there, it's clearly obvious. And he's got it all wrong. He's gone for the bump. He has not gone for the tackle. And he's hit him in the head. So yeah, that should have been weeks, because there's been plenty of incidents that have been like that. And the Toby Green incident, it wasn't a bump. It was nothing at that end of the spectrum. It was just purely him trying to get over the tackle, and he's got him. He's elbowed him in the head. I don't think there was any malice intended. Whereas Joel Selwood, is shown to be dirty at times. And he's done it numerous times this year, and he's gotten off every single time, which, yeah, as I said, is bullshit. But what can you do? Regardless, it doesn't take away from this. Well, it shouldn't take away from this huge win by the Giants away from home, number 1. Under pressure, coming off a loss last week. Everything they needed to do, even the ones that came in, stood up. Zach Sproul, in the middle, huge. Did a bit of ruck work, and brought a bit of intensity as the ruckman. A bit similar to Jack Silvani, probably similar height, and can have that same influence at ground level. So that was really good from him. I just want to touch on something else very shortly. We talk a lot about the Geelong Cats aging list, and that they should play a few more of their kids. Well, I was scrolling through Twitter, and I think there were 6 minutes left, and the Cats were down by 9 points. Isaac Cumming, tries to do a little switch, turns it over 15 metres out. Jordan Clark has the ball. He can go back and drop punt it, and it'll go through. But he decides to do a snap like everyone does in the modern game, from about 20 out on a slight angle, and he sprays this shit and it goes out on the full. That could have brought it to 3 points with 6 minutes left, and you never know what that could have done in terms of momentum, if the Giants drop their heads. You never know. But, you know, I think Jordan Clark's played enough games to be able to compose himself enough and go back and kick the drop punt. But those little examples are reasons why the Cats don't give their kids a bit more of a run, and why they can't break into the best 22. Because, you know, simple stuff like that, you know, could cost them games. And I mean, could you say that it cost them this game? I mean, we'll never know, but yeah. Let's move on to the Saturday games. And I do not want to touch on the 1:45 time slot too much, because Carlton dished up another shit performance. And it's not taking away anything from Gold Coast, because they played, you know, they played their own game, and they played the game very well, and Carlton could make adjustments. But look, this is the reason why we can't hit finals, because simply put, we lose the games we should be winning, and then we step up against better sides. It's as simple as that. We should have beaten North, and we should have beaten Gold Coast. Remarkably, same time slot, same venue, but the same shit. Like, it's ridiculous. It really is, and it's so frustrating to be a Carlton supporter when you just see the team dish up that shit, you know, especially when they, you know, they're under the pump, at least their coaches. You know, they could make finals. If they won the North game and they won this Gold Coast game, you never know. They could have been probably in the 8th spot right now, which is just amazing to think, given how much shit they've been under from the media. But, you know, it wouldn't hurt to string like a couple of good performances together, don't you think? Like, yeah. I mean, it was just so frustrating, really infuriating to watch. You know, Harry was well held by Sam Collins. Took Miller just keeps doing what he does. You know, Sam Walsh, he wasn't on his A game, and now he's injured, which is not a good sign. Harry Mackay also went down, clutching his shoulder pretty badly. He was in a lot of pain. Played out the game, but look, I don't know why we did that. Season done for the Baggers, so at least I don't have to put myself through pain or, you know, give myself a bit of false hope. At least that's what the team was giving me. A bit of false hope that we could make the finals, but that's done. Thank God. We moved to the night game that I watched. The Saints played the Swans, and the Saints ran the Swans off their feet. They pretty much played the Swans game. You know, just tackling pressure and intensity all night. I think the Swans' defense was a bit troubled. Max King, I mean, you just had to sit it on his head, and there would have been problems. You know what I'm saying? He's huge, and they put Dane Rampy on him, so he's giving up a fair few centimeters of height there. And even though, like, he's a really good defender, I mean, some things you just can't control. And if Max King sticks his arms all the way out, if they're outstretched, you know, you're basically chopping the arms if you try to spoil the ball. So, yeah. But look, they look pretty damn good, the Saints. They were, you know, very fluent in their ball movement. They couldn't get that going against the Baggers last week. But this week, you know, it was a different story. Yeah, the Swans, they had a bit of a run. You know, they never really took control of the game. I mean, Jack Steele, you know, we've mentioned numerous times how much of a leader he is. He had another huge game. I believe he kicked 2 goals, or maybe kicked 1 goal, but he had a big influence in that last quarter. And I think we expected the Swans to, you know, look more dangerous on the scoreboard. They're one of the highest scoring teams, if not the highest scoring team, of the season. And they were held to 10 goals against a decimated Saints defence. I think they brought in Dara Joyce as the replacement for Dougal Howard. So on paper, that doesn't look great. But in the actual game itself, you know, the backline held very strong. I think Wilkie went to Buddy Franklin and held him too. So, you know, this is a huge win for the Saints. We wrote them off, and now they're back in the finals hunt. So this is what we're doing for a lot of teams. You know, it's changing week in, week out. We moved to Sunday. Hawthorn played the Pies, and this was a game of youth. We saw a lot of youth on both sides of the ball. But overall, the Hawks came out on top. The Hawks have won 2 in a row now. And it looks, you know, fairly promising for this team that are missing a lot of players. Chad Wingard, I think, has gone into the midfield in recent weeks, and he's done a good job. I've been a bit critical of him. I think I was a couple of weeks ago, just doing some really stupid shit in the forward half. But, you know, this time round, you know, he was doing some really good things with the football. Tom Mitchell racked them up. I think he had 43 touches or something like that, and a goal. So he was pretty much everywhere. But for the Pies, yeah, they weren't looking as clean as they were last week. I mean, last week they were versing traffic cones. This week, it was a bit of a different story. The Hawks backline was fairly good. You know, they were pretty much pressuring the Pies all day. They didn't really let up. I mean, they didn't even struggle for goals, to be honest. I mean, with Luke Bruce out, you thought that they were going to struggle a little bit, but, you know, it didn't really change that dynamic. You know, a few players, like more midfielders, got on the scoreboard. The forwards did their fair share, but it was the midfielders doing a fair bit of the work. But, I mean, if you're a Pie supporter, you know, the season's done, so you want to see your kids, see what they can do. And I think they've got a few good players. I mean, Jack Ginnivan, yeah, he's played his 3rd game or something like that, and he kicked 3 goals on the weekend. So I guess you can take a positive out of that. But overall, this team was just, yeah, it was lacking today. I mean, they didn't have the freedom that they've had in recent weeks. And you know, Hawthorn, I think they were kicking goals at will at times. You know, it was just too easy for them. So they sort of flipped the script to what, you know, the Pies did to the Eagles last week. And then we moved to the last game I covered. Brisbane played Fremantle, and Brisbane just too strong in this one. It was a bit wet in the second half, and you know, the Lions, they just found ways. I mean, they kicked 18 goals, which was nuts given the conditions, especially in the second half. But yeah, this team was just, you know, too strong. They were winning the ball out of the middle. Jared Lyons didn't have his best game of the year. Zorko was probably the biggest influence on the game. I mean, he was just winning everything, and I mean, he was doing torpedoes for clearances, and you know, distance was the name of the game yesterday. And that's probably why they got so many scores on the board. They were able to lock that ball in. You know, they were fairly accurate. You know, they created chances that, you know, they were half chances. They shouldn't have been scores, let alone goals. But they managed to do that. I think they had a couple goals from top of the goal square, so obviously that's going to help towards your point total. You know, I think Joe Danaher kicked a couple goals from the pockets, which were just, you know, stuff like that's extremely valuable, especially in wet conditions. But look, this was an overall team performance. This is one the Lions needed, and this is one where, you know, they can be a danger side. If they end up 5th position going into the finals, they'll be dangerous. They'll be dangerous. I think they'll go in as underdogs. They may be written off, seeing where they finished and not being a top 4 side. But they could go for a real run, and I believe their defenders are going to come back in the next couple of weeks. So that's going to, you know, that's going to really help them out. It's going to strengthen them. It's going to make it difficult for better sides to score. I mean, yesterday they were playing a Fremantle side that struggled. You know, that tall forward dynamic that Freo have got going, it just doesn't work. I mean, did it work last week? They kicked 7 goals. They kicked 55 last week and got a win. Consider themselves lucky. It was a gritty win last week. But this week, yeah, it just doesn't work. Taberner is a bit of a dud at times. And then you've got Darcy. I mean, Darcy is a good mark. He's a pretty damn good mark, but he's just he's a bit less mobile, and that's the same with Lloyd Meek. So it's a bit of an ill dynamic, if you know what I'm saying. They all just sat under the ball, and I think Tracy was down there yesterday as well, but sometimes they spoil each other. They just sit under the ball sometimes. They don't time their run. And that's just easy pickings for defenders. So I don't know where the balance sits for the Dockers. Maybe they have 2 keys. I mean, that'll help when Rory Lobb's back in the side. It'll be a bit easier. You've got a couple more options in terms of, mobility and stuff like that. Yeah, they struggled there, but just generally speaking, Fremantle make it a lot more complicated for themselves in terms of, trying to pull off some shitty kick or, just messing up an out number or something simple like that. They find a way to, just overcomplicate it for themselves, and sometimes it costs them for goals. For themselves, and sometimes they give goals away because of their mistakes. Yeah, and that's what's letting them down, I think, at the moment. I think that's what's gonna separate them from being a final side and to being a fringe final side. So finishing 8th or finishing 11th. I think that's the major difference for them. We'll just skim over the games I didn't really cover. Richmond played North. North looked pretty good for the first half. They held Richmond to a goal, and then Richmond just took control. And North couldn't, they couldn't withstand the pressure because they were getting absolutely pelted in their own defensive half. The floodgates had broken, essentially. So Richmond, they needed that win. It wasn't looking good in the first half, and season could have been, considered over for them, but they won a much needed game. This one, there was no excuses. They couldn't drop this. We move to Saturday night, and for the majority of the night, it looked like we had a major upset on the cards. The Crows were pretty much up the entirety of the game, and then Port they got up by, I think, probably 10 points tops, and that was enough of a buffer. Simple stuff, man. Simple stuff. They needed to win this game, and they did in what was another showdown classic. And then the Bombers upset the Dogs, but Peter Wright kicked 7. Josh Bruce did his ACL in the final seconds, the same pocket that Sam Walsh hurt himself. So there may be a little bit of, I don't know, sorcery or something in that pocket. Stay away from it. Because that was... it's pretty shit for him because he's been in the team, I think, every game this season. And he was struck down in the final 30 seconds. So that shows that all players are not invincible, and injuries can happen at any moment. So that's why our clubs, they are a bit conservative on their good players in the final minutes. Essendon, big win from them. Peter Wright coming in clutch. 7 goals. That's massive. I don't think he's ever had a haul that big. Maybe he did once or twice at Gold Coast. He put in a very strong showing when the Bombers needed it. So fair play to the Bombers versing a team that is full of firepower, and they got Treloar back yesterday as well. So, that just amplifies the importance and, how impressive this win really was for the Bombers. And we've still got a game to play. Melbourne, West Coast, I'm not sure how that's going to go. Last time we had a Monday night game, West Coast played North, and look what happened. So, do we have another upset on the cards where the Eagles beat the D's? Or are the D's going to do what they did to the Suns last week? The Suns and the Eagles played very similar games last week, so you'd hope that the Eagles don't dish another one up, because that could be very, very ugly for them and for their supporters, because I believe they have a crowd. Anyway, that is all. Hope you enjoyed this one. And I guess I will see you next week. Although, I will mention that I am going to start doing some basketball and soccer, Premier League type videos. Because, I follow those two pretty religiously. So, the trade window's open for both of those sports right now. So I'm going to probably have a look at those. Yeah, anyway, so long, and I will see you in the next one, whenever that is. Peace out.